This is Thighs, and he was falsely framed as a cheater. He was wrongfully robbed of his reputation and title as a top player on the biggest Minecraft server, Hypixel. In this video, I'm going to try and clear his name, explain how all of it started, and why these allegations are false. This is the true story of Thighs, and I urge you to listen to it. Skyblock, Hypixel's largest minigame, has a massive cheating problem. Due to the game's repetitive nature, which requires players to perform identical actions for hours on end, some people have opted to coding macros. These macros effectively play the game for you without any input. This is both disallowed by Hypixel and mostly frowned upon within the community. Usually, these players are banned by staff members, but there are occasional exceptions where known cheaters within the community go unpunished for long periods of time. Thighs was allegedly one of these cheaters, who allegedly used a macro, however was not yet banned. To prove why these claims are not true, let's take a look at what he does. Thighs is a nether wart farmer, which means he decided to build a humongous nether wart farm one day and then spent an excessive amount of time farming it, ultimately achieving the #1 rank for nether wart collection on the entire server. Something that is considered a remarkable feat in Skyblock. And Thighs isn't alone in his dedication for the game. There are others like Lotzi, the current holder for most sugarcane collection, who has invested significantly more time than Thighs. So then why is Thighs singled out as the cheater? Towards the end of 2023, rumors began circulating that Thighs maintained 24/7 uptime. This meant that his account was constantly farming without any breaks. Given that continuously farming for weeks at a time is not possible, since, humans need to sleep, it led people to believe that he was a macroer. There were also allegations that he was using a cheat called Fast Break. Fast Break allows players to break crops significantly faster than normal, legitimate players. If Thighs was using this cheat, it would allow him to gain collection multitudes faster than his competition. After these claims surfaced, due to constant in-game harassment because people believed he was a macroer, Thighs disabled his public collection API, which meant players were now unable to view how much nether wart collection he had. But this only further affirmed people's suspicions that he was macroing, since if his collection is turned off, people cannot track how fast or when he farms. Following these accusations, Thighs was banned from the largest farming Discord server, forever to be regarded and seen as a nefarious cheater. The first claim against Thighs is that his account is always farming, 24/7, without any breaks, which is, as we established, humanly impossible and suggests the use of a macro. The current proof behind this allegation is illustrated in something called a contest graph. In Skyblock, farming contests are competitions that take place once per hour, or 24 times per day, and anyone who is farming at the time of the contest is automatically entered into it. The farming contest system allows us to identify the hours in which an individual is and isn't farming. If they are farming, the contest score will appear under their name. If they aren't, it won't. Going back to the graph, the right-hand side represents the hour of the day, while the left side shows the player's total contest entries for each hour. This is why it's called the contest graph, and usually contest scores are accumulated over the player's entire farming history. So this number over here represents how many contests they have ever participated in within the 7th hour of the day. Thighs' graph is unusual because it shows farming activity across all hours of the day. For reference, here is a regular farmer's contest graph. You can see a drastic dip during the hours they are asleep or away from their desk. Because of this, people are quick to assume that Thighs is a cheater with zero downtime. However, this argument can be deconstructed when you take into account his sleep schedule. Thighs is the opposite of consistent when it comes to sleep, and the constantly changing schedule can very simply explain this graph. In Thighs' own words, the graph does not show 24-hour uptime. I could do one contest for the first 12 hours of the day for week 1, completely rotate my sleep schedule, then do one contest for the remaining 12 hours on week 2, and the graph would show an even one contest every hour. This graph does not prove that Thighs is cheating. It simply proves that he has an inconsistent sleep schedule. And we can verify this by looking at individual days worth of contest scores, that is to say, view his farming over singular days instead of his entire farming career. I have taken 3 separate days over the last few months to showcase this: February 27th, April 16th, and May 23rd, 2024. As you can see, his sleep schedule is very inconsistent. If we add these 3 days together, it appears as though he's farming for almost the entire day. But we now know that this isn't the case. If you're still skeptical, you can do this for different days or for a longer time frame just to see the shift in sleep schedule for yourself. I have provided a link in the description that explains how. Just for fun, I decided to view the contest graphs of other top farmers. One of these farmers is the #1 melon farmer. He too has an inconsistent sleep schedule, and hence his contest graph also looks sketchy. If Thighs is being framed, why are other top farmers considered legit and respected? I am not saying the #1 melon farmer is a cheater, in fact I believe the opposite. I am just pointing out another inconsistency with this argument. The second suspicion people have of Thighs is his collection being turned off. Although we can roughly view when he farms with contests, we are mostly unable to see how much he farms, which can be a reason for suspicion. But again, this can be pretty easily explained. In Thigh's own words, I get harassed way less by elite farmers and random people partying me in-game when I turn off collection API. Nonetheless, it's still technically possible to view his collection, a fact he himself pointed out. Despite disabling his collection, the netherwort hoe he uses to farm his netherwort, like all farming tools, has an independent collection counter, which is still public information. So if I farm 1000 crops with a clean farming tool, and then hand it over to my friend who also farms 1000 crops, both of us will show that 1000 collection. However, the hoe itself will be at 2000. Thigh's netherwort hoe, which he has used for the majority of his career, is again still visible to the public. This means we can track when Thighs is or isn't farming, and most importantly, how much he is farming. This leads us nicely into the third accusation. Thighs uses fast break, meaning he is able to break crops faster than normal players through the use of a hacked client. To disprove this, we can use the Wayback Machine to view his host counter on the 24th of April. It is 11,318,475,891. At the time of writing this script, the 25th of May, his counter has risen to 12,540,068,050. This means that in under 32 days, he has gained a little over 1.22 billion netherwort, which seems like a lot, but let's break down the maths. Assuming he has the highest possible break speed that can be obtained legitimately, it would mean he can break 20 netherwort crops every single second. Or in other words, after applying farming boosts, he gains 1012 netherwort collection per second. This means it would take him 335 hours to reach the 1.22 billion collection threshold, or an average of 11 hours per day. If we check his sleep schedule, this value roughly aligns. If he was fast breaking, he would farm for a substantially lower amount of time per day to achieve this type of progression. However, he does not. This, again, suggests that Thighs is legit. While the first 3 allegations are fairly straightforward to disprove, the fourth and last one is not as easy, and it arises from just a singular photograph. If you examine the frame closely, you can spot Thighs in the background. But what does this mean, and why does it matter? Well, in Skyblock, people mostly farm in a place called the Garden. Occasionally, though, the server will close and restart for game updates. When this happens, players farming in the Garden are kicked out and relocated to the Skyblock hub. If you're paying attention to your screen, you would simply warp back into the Garden and continue farming. However, if you're cheating, then your macro would continue walking as if it was farming, except you're not farming, you're walking into a wall at hub. The image from above captures several cheaters walking into the wall. But if you have a keen eye, you have probably noticed that Thighs is not in the crowd of macroers, but instead in a corner behind them. This doesn't immediately clear his name, since it is realistic for certain macros, after not detecting any crops in front of them, to try and walk backwards in an attempt to find another lane. It's plausible that Thighs had been kicked from the Garden, hit the wall, and then walked backwards because of his macro. Though it's also possible that Thighs might have just been in a lobby, saw a group of cheaters, and decided to check it out. After all, it is a pretty amusing and rare sight to see this many macroers at once. So which of these scenarios is more plausible, and how can we tell from a single screenshot? The first thing we can do is analyze the positioning of his shoulders. In Minecraft, when you move in a specific direction, your shoulders rotate accordingly. In the screenshot, we can see that Thigh's shoulder is slightly rotated towards us. If we try to recreate the two possible routes he could have taken to get to this position, with the red path suggesting he is probably using a macro, we can see that both paths result in the same shoulder placement. However, if you really zoom into the image, it becomes pretty clear that Thighs isn't actually backed into the corner. He's positioned about half a block to the right. This detail is crucial because if we consider the red path, it would mean he had walked into the wall, went backwards, and then veered slightly to the right before suddenly stopping. This sequence is not only illogical for a macro, but also literally impossible because it would result in his shoulder facing the opposite direction. Therefore, the only feasible path he could have taken is the green one. Another key detail you might have noticed is his head position, which is slightly tilted downward. Certain crops, such as potatoes and carrots, require a similar tilted angle for farming, so it's possible that his macro adjusted to this angle. But then again, you have to remember that Thighs farms netherwort, a crop that requires you to look straight ahead, and it seems illogical for him to suddenly switch for seemingly no reason. Looking downward would also fit with the story of him coming to observe the macroers, as tilting his head in third person would allow him to see the cheaters more clearly. All in all, I believe that Thighs was simply caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and because of already existing allegations, it served as a catalyst for more chaos, when in reality, he was just a bit curious. While I covered the main accusations held against Thighs, I would also like to discuss the likelihood of him not being banned. Let's for a second assume that he is somehow cheating. He currently holds the top netherwort position and 5th position in overall farming weight on the entire server. No other known macroer has even come close to achieving a third of what he has without ever facing consequences. There are cases of known cheaters getting away with it, but never in the magnitude that Thighs allegedly has. This, alongside the fact that there is no proof he has ever downloaded or purchased a macro, should be enough evidence to suggest that he does not cheat, and has been framed as something he isn't. By the time this video is out, Thighs has thankfully been unbanned from the Skyblock Farming Discord and removed from any known macro or cheater databases. His reputation, however, is still tampered, so it would be incredibly helpful if you shared the news. Thanks for watching.